In 1972, Peter Singer wrote a paper that changed the trajectory of his life and of many others. Um, the paper um, wasn't exactly very long. It was about 18 pages long, um, titled Famine, Affluence, and Morality. This paper was phenomenal. It was a milestone in what has come to be today as the effective altruism movement. And um, well, this paper is still considered a prime example of the usage of um, of analogies in doing moral reasoning. Um, and it has certainly spurred many debates about well, the meta-ethical methodology when it comes to trusting our intuitions and um, using analogies. Although Peter Singer personally wasn't exactly fond of using some certain type, trusting some certain types of intuitions. Um, but he certainly admitted analogies as a useful way of reasoning in that paper. Now, the argument of the paper is quite simple. It says that if we are obliged to, when we see a drowning child in a pond near, near us, um, it seems like we are in fact obliged to save the child even at cost even at high cost to ourselves. For example, we might be wearing like a I don't know, an expensive jacket, um, a new expensive jacket. When we see that child drowning, um, of course it is our duty to save the child. So now Peter Singer says that there really is no um, morally significant difference or morally relevant difference between a drowning child in a pond, 5 meters away from you, or and a starving child, somewhere, I don't know, maybe like perhaps in Indonesia, maybe like I don't know, 5,000 kilometers from you. There is no morally analogous difference. Now, why is that? Well, he sort of dissected well these moral elements uh the moral analogy into elements, right? For instance, even if the pond was 50 meters away, that wouldn't make a difference. 500 meters away, that wouldn't make a difference, right? It just seems to us that distance does not constitute a valid difference morally when it comes to our obligation to save to save someone, right? Now, a second sort of objection raised against Peter Singer was that there are other people available to help these drowning, not drowning, starving children far away from you. Well, now imagine that the pond like 5 meters from you, right? There are I don't know, maybe 10 people standing there, right? And if no one is really willing to save the child, then it seems like you still are obliged to save the child regardless of the number of people present. Well, of course, if someone already saves the child, there seems to be no need to further sort of save the child. Like can't save a child twice, but when we reasonably expect um or we reasonably perceive no one else to be really saving a child, or nobody is really we the effort of saving the child is not enough yet, then we have good reason to still I mean good reason to think that we are still obliged to save the child, regardless of the number of people present. So, well, how is it analogous to sort of a drowning child in the first place, you might ask? Well, it is analogous in the sense that um, Here, I'll give you a syllogism I wrote, in summary of this article. So, premise one, if it is in our powers to prevent something very bad from happening without thereby sacrificing anything of comparable moral significance, then we must morally do it. We're obliged to do it. That seems like a pretty admissible premise. Hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death are very bad. If it is in our powers to prevent hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death from happening without thereby sacrificing anything of comparable moral significance, then we must morally do it. The luxuries on which we spend money, therefore have hurt our powers to prevent very bad things from happening, are not of moral significance. If it is in our power to prevent hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death from happening, even by sacrificing luxuries like buying instead of making coffee, eating out at restaurants, buying new clothes, then we must do it. By donating money to relief agencies like Oxfam, it is in our power, that is, we could, prevent hunger, disease, and other sources of suffering, disability, and death. It is wrong if we don't give up our luxuries, such as, buying coffee, eating out at restaurants, buying new clothes, and if we don't donate, that is wrong. Well, so, um, now of course there are questions, stemming from our intuition against this. So for example, there might be a question of maximality. Um, so, for example, right? Um, sure, the analogy of the drowning child says that we ought to give up some of our luxuries to prevent something very bad from happening, but it doesn't really say that we have to give up all of our luxuries to prevent something very bad from happening to the best of our power. Now, the question, naturally then arises, where do we draw the line, right? Like, if it is not obligatory to, give up all of our luxuries, then why is it obligatory to give up, minimally, our luxuries? You know, the inability to draw a line, could potentially cast some doubt on the obligation, the original obligation in the first place. Um, so, uh, so yeah, another sort of um, rebuttal I might have, potential sort of worry, is that there are no morally analogous cases. If the two cases share the same moral intuition, they are morally analogous. Um, one should not attempt to discover beyond intuition with intuition. The should here is a hypothetical imperative instead of a categorical imperative, in Kantian terms. A support I could see for this argument is from uncertainty. So essentially, the claim is that we must maximize the moral permissibility of our action. Um, so it seems like it is definitely permissible to donate, or at least quite more likely permissible, more permissible, um, more likely permissible to donate than uh, it being permissible to not donate. So we should donate. We must donate. Yeah, so that's a brief introduction of Peter Singer's seminal paper, Famine, Affluence, and Morality. I strongly recommend you check it out. Uh, well, I guess it's strong in the sense that it's very implicative, right? It's like if what it says is true, then we must give up buying coffee, like literally. So yeah. Um, thanks for your time.